Your brain is changing right now, not in 10 years. Not if things get worse, right now, today. If you have been under sustained pressure for weeks or months, your brain is physically, measurably different from what it was before the stress began. Not metaphorically, not as a feeling, structurally. And here is what makes this so important to understand. Most of the changes happen in the regions of your brain responsible for who you are. Your memory, your decisions, your emotional responses, your ability to feel anything good at all. Picture this. You are sitting in a meeting at work. Someone asks you something simple, something you would normally answer without thinking, and you hesitate. The information is there, you know it is there, but reaching it feels like trying to find something in a room where someone moved everything. Or you go home at the end of a day that was objectively fine and you feel nothing. Not bad exactly, just flat. Like the volume on your emotions got turned down without your permission. Or you notice you are reacting to things differently than you used to, shorter patience, quicker to feel hopeless. Less able to remember why things used to feel worth it. That is not weakness. That is neuroscience. And in the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside your brain and why understanding it is the first step to reversing it. When your body detects stress, any stress, physical or psychological, it releases a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is not the enemy. In short bursts, before a big presentation, in a moment of physical danger, cortisol is life-saving. It sharpens your focus. It floods your muscles with energy. It prepares you to act. The problem is chronic stress, the kind that does not switch off, the kind that has been running for months. The low, constant pressure of a difficult job, a strained relationship, financial uncertainty, a life that never quite settles. When cortisol stays elevated long-term, it begins to damage the very brain regions it was designed to protect. Research from Stanford neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky, who spent decades studying stress and the brain, found that chronically elevated cortisol physically shrinks the hippocampus. The hippocampus is your brain's memory center. It is where new information gets stored, where you form new memories, where context, the ability to understand why something matters, lives. When it shrinks, your memory gets worse, learning becomes harder, and the ability to find perspective, to remember that difficult periods end, gets quieter. But here is where it gets stranger. Chronic stress does not just affect what you remember. It affects every decision you make. Your prefrontal cortex is the most evolved part of your brain. It handles planning, impulse control, rational thinking, long-term consequences, the ability to pause before reacting. Under chronic stress, cortisol begins to suppress prefrontal cortex activity, literally reducing blood flow to the region. At the same time, it increases activity in the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, the part that reacts before it thinks. What this means in real life, under chronic stress, your brain is running on its most primitive settings. Reactive instead of thoughtful, defensive instead of open, focused on immediate threat instead of long-term good. And the cruel part, the decisions you make from this state, the things you say, the choices you default to, the way you treat the people around you can create more stress, which keeps cortisol elevated, which keeps the prefrontal cortex suppressed, which makes the next decision harder. It is a biological loop, and most people inside it have no idea they are in it. This is the part nobody warns you about. Chronic stress changes who you are. Not permanently, not irreversibly, but measurably. Research shows that people under sustained stress become, on average, more irritable, more pessimistic, more socially withdrawn, and less able to feel pleasure in things that previously brought them genuine satisfaction. Psychologists call the last one anhedonia, the flattening of positive emotion. And it is one of the most common but least discussed effects of long-term stress. You might notice it as doing something you used to love and feeling nothing, or looking forward to something and then feeling flat when it arrives. Or noticing that the things that used to make you, your sense of humor, your curiosity, your warmth, feel further away than usual. That is not a personality change. That is a stress response. And the difference matters because one is permanent and one is not. Chronic stress also suppresses your dopamine system. Dopamine is not, as it is often described, the pleasure chemical. It is the anticipation chemical. It is what makes you lean toward the future, what creates motivation, what makes starting things feel worth it. When dopamine is suppressed by sustained cortisol, the future stops pulling you. Everything feels equally pointless. The gap between knowing what you should do and being able to make yourself do it widens. And this is why, when people under chronic stress are told to just exercise, just meditate, just think positively, it can feel genuinely impossible. Not because they are failing, but because the part of the brain that creates the motivation to do those things is the part currently being suppressed. But here is what the research actually confirms works. Physical movement, even 10 minutes of walking, has been shown to reduce cortisol and increase hippocampal neurogenesis, literally stimulating the growth of new brain cells in the region stress damaged. Social connection, even brief, genuine interaction, releases oxytocin, which directly counteracts cortisol's effects on the brain. And perhaps most importantly, naming what is happening. Understanding that what you are experiencing is not weakness or failure, but a biological response to sustained pressure activates the prefrontal cortex and begins to restore the perspective that stress stole. Your brain under chronic stress is not your real brain. It is your brain on survival mode, doing exactly what it was designed to do when it believes the pressure will never stop. The version of you that feels flatter, shorter, less capable, less like yourself, that is not a true reflection of who you are. That is a stressed brain running on cortisol, trying to keep you alive through something it was not designed to sustain indefinitely. Understanding this does not fix it overnight, but it does something that matters. It separates you from the stress response. And that separation is where recovery begins. Tell me in the comments, what is the one thing about yourself that has changed the most during the most stressful period of your life? I read everything, and the answer to that question tells you more about your brain under stress than any test ever could.